The home star exploded, but it didn't completely explode. A massive deity-like existence emerged from the center of the earth. Wave your hand to scatter the fragmented eggshell-shaped debris of the plate, stepping towards the starry sea. Earth. I'm free. A famous fourth natural disaster. We haven't got on the bus yet. Keywords of the novel. Mother Star secretly transformed into a pop.up without us. Mother Star secretly transformed into a TXT complete collection download without us. Mother Star secretly transformed into the latest chapter reading without us. Chapter 1. Our home star splits. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Our home star splits. The air was filled with a pungent smell of sulfur, and the crimson sparks that had been faintly visible since childhood sank and floated in the misty clouds mixed with green, black, and sauce yellow, landing on the body like a blazing bubble. A huge amount of fluffy volcanic ash, resembling dirty feathers, covered the entire world, obscuring even the radiance of the sun, becoming dim and yellow. Strands of mottled and viscous debris poured onto the huge, shadowy, and rolling independent clouds. The scorching updrafts rushed up from beneath the foundation of the floating island, and a fierce hurricane sliced through the island, emitting a sharp sound. The small floating island drifted like a boat, seeming to capsize at any moment. The flocculent dust and the ever-changing Mars rose with the wind, like an inverted waterfall or a slowly flowing Milky Way hidden in the darkest part of the universe. Strange and terrifying, yet inexplicably magnificent and magnificent. Anyone who wanders alone in such an environment, who still has time to see the scenery, will become anxious or even collapse. Li Tsang took out a cigarette, threw it at Mars, and took 2 sips, bark and click. Lucky, the smoke was actually lit. Chow. What the fuck is this? It's just 3 days, it feels like 3 years have passed. Li Tsang has started to learn how to talk to himself, and according to this development trend, it is not very difficult for him to answer fluently and laugh at the wind. Loneliness, fear, and the threat of death are never the most terrifying. The most terrifying thing will forcibly devour you after 3 days of hunger. The fierce hunger like a flood of water and beasts made Li Tsang's movements fly fast. However, in fact, he doesn't have to starve like this bird, but this also involves a problem. You don't even know how outrageous the actions of hungry people can be. A few hours ago, after eating everything he could, following the principle that even the smallest mosquito leg is still meat, he waited for a long time and chewed a plate of stomach-strengthening and digestive tablets with a click. Sour and sweet, it's quite delicious. Why don't the old man next door prepare a few more boxes of such good things? Today Li Tsang thinks he can eat a cow raw. What is drinking poison to quench thirst? I'm so hungry that I dare to eat even stomach-strengthening and digestive pills. Cough. Unfortunately, the search value for this irregular floating island of 16x16m is limited to the naked eye. Before it shattered, it should have been a remote wilderness, with a few scattered wild shepherd's purse plants appearing sickly in temperatures around 40 degrees Celsius and severely abnormal air conditions. On the other hand, the wild roses next to it appeared vibrant, with clusters of gray-white flocculent dust-covered leaves and dozens of pink-white small flowers. Wild rose flowers, stems, roots, leaves, and fruits can all be used as medicine and food. The content of protein, crude fiber, keratin, niacin, vitamins, and other ingredients is not low. It has a sweet and cool taste, can relieve heat, dampness, dysentery, regulate qi, suppress vomiting, and prevent mouth and tongue sores. It is suitable for this damn weather. It is worth mentioning that crushed wild roses can even treat traumatic bleeding. This is a good thing. Li Tsang used broken wood to dig out the entire wild rose, leaving a head-sized mound of protective soil. The rotten plastic bag hanging on the branches of the wild rose was just enough to hold a handful of shepherd's purse. Tie the plastic bag around your waist, but don't worry about the thorny branches of the wild rose getting tangled up. Use your belt to tie it up on your back, scan around, and see that there is really no value in searching, so leave decisively. Following the sheets, Li Tsang quickly crawled back and withdrew the black cloth rope woven with steel bars tied at the top into a hook shape. Losing the link of the rope, the searched, wild island, drifted away, slowly hiding in the thick smoke and dust. The floating island belonging to Li Tsang is much smaller than the previously searched wild island, only 8 by 8 in size and shaped like a peach. The floating island is suspended in the misty and vast half-sky, with a flat surface and a cone-shaped island base, like a fairy mountain described in ancient books, very supernatural. But the overall environment here is far from what kind of fairy mountain it is. The temperature of the environment often rises to 40 degrees, and the whole world outside the floating island is gray-yellow, with hot and evil winds blowing. The thick sulfur smell of smoke lingers, and there is another layer of surface below the island, which is incalculably deep. It is faintly visible that the crisscrossing magma river flows freely, with rolling smoke columns as thick as mountain peaks, hitting the sky. Li Tsang used a small knife made of broken iron plates with uneven canine teeth to trim off the thin and weak branches of the wild rose to reduce its crown, and planted it in a pre-dug pit on the ground. In theory, under such a large environment, floating island is so small that it will soon be roasted and burst like chestnuts in a charcoal fire. But the fact is, the land of floating island has always maintained a relatively low temperature, cold and humid, seemingly protected by unreasonable rules that can make countless scientific giants and cows open their coffins. After burying the soil, Li Tsang tilted a large trash can into a water bucket with a heart-wrenching expression and poured some water down. The water was collected when it rained the day before yesterday. I can't believe it's going to rain in this environment. The color of the rainwater is dark yellow, and you can taste the suspicious sourness directly from your mouth. If you drink it in one gulp, the periodic table of elements is probably in your stomach. After finishing all of this, he washed the wild shepherd's purse a little, threw it into a rusty iron can box, and boiled it in the ashes of the charcoal fire. After pruning the branches of wild roses, the black-brown skin is peeled off, revealing tender, water-green stems. Without hesitation, Li Tsang threw it into his mouth and chewed it, his expression even showing a hint of greed. It is tender and has a fresh and astringent taste with a tingling mouth. Chewing for a long time feels like inferior chewing gum. The taste is not bad. For Li Tsang, who hasn't had even a serious meal for a few days and has just faded out of his mouth, this thing is no less than nectar. Apart from a slight sore throat, there is no other problem. Effortlessly swallowing it into his stomach, Li Tsang couldn't help but spit out the fragrance. Mr. Lu Sun once said that when God closes a door, he often welds even the window to death. Is there anything in this world that's even more damn than you closing your eyes in the ICU and discovering the end of the world? It has been proven that there are some. Because Li Tsang had just paid a down payment for a large flat floor before admission. And this floating island belonging to him was the intensive care unit on the first floor of Building B of Yanchuan's second hospital, which was contracted by Li Tsang for several months before its collapse. The hospital building, which was claimed to have a 9-degree earthquake resistance, now only has a broken wall in the corner. He covered the broken L-shaped wall with leftover steel bars and wooden boards for living, leaving less than 2 square meters of ceramic tiles between the L-corners that were higher than the surrounding ground. The surrounding ground seemed to have been scraped off, with a layer of green-black soil. Across from it was an apple tree as thick as an adult's thigh. This tree used to be lush with branches and leaves, but now only half of its crown is left, twisted and sickly. There are a few withered flower bones on the tree, and it is unclear whether it can still bear fruit. Wild roses are planted 1 meter away from the apple tree, and they should be able to get a little shade during the hottest time of the day. The heavy rain the day before yesterday saved the lives of Li Tsang and the apple tree. Otherwise, Li Tsang wouldn't even have had to gnaw on the grass roots, nor would he have had the strength to climb over the ropes and search for supplies on the drifting wild island. There is still more than half a bucket of water, so save some to drink for 3 days. The problem now is that there is no food. The branches of wild roses claim to be nutritious, but obviously cannot provide enough calories. Only a tiny bit, even if we eat all the newly planted ones dug out, we won't be able to endure 2 meals. Li Tsang waved his hand, and the ground in front of him suddenly emitted scattered green hues, from vagueness to strands, becoming brighter and brighter, gradually converging into a vortex. The vortex flickered twice, and a dark green crystal-shaped coin jumped out of it. The void suspended above the vortex at a height of about 1 foot from the ground. The misty aura emanating from the crystal coin, resembling an aurora, was finally projected into a virtual interface 3 feet square in front of Li Tsang, beginning to play the most realistic, cutscenes animation ever. In the intermittent news footage, the city was instantly overturned in an abyss without a bottom, with mountains and earth collapsing, magma flowing horizontally, mushroom clouds mixed with lightning soaring high into the sky, and tsunamis tens or even hundreds of meters high accompanied by hurricanes. At 4:56 a.m. on May 29, 2026, the 6 major plates of the Earth, including the Pacific Plate, Eurasian Plate, African Plate, American Plate, Indian Ocean Plate, and Antarctic Plate, as well as more than 20 small and medium-sized plates, moved away from each other and rapidly split at a speed of about 0.9 meters per second, which is 5,000 to 75 million times the normal drift speed of the plates. The planet that relies on survival is disintegrating. Intense earthquakes, tsunamis, and volcanic activity are occurring at the edges of major tectonic plates. There is currently no relevant data on casualties. The relevant departments call on the public to enter nearby seismic fortifications to actively seek refuge and self-rescue, and to prepare for accommodating evacuees in coastal cities. The National Emergency Plan for Major Natural Disasters is applicable, and the specific situation in each region shall prevail. Not only does it have visuals, but it even has sound. If it weren't for witnessing it firsthand, it's hard to imagine this being the last urgent news of humanity before a disaster that was projected from a damn coin. The screen rotates and enters outer space, with the perspective facing the blue pearl of the solar system. Bang! The Earth exploded. But it didn't explode completely. A great life planet suddenly expands dozens of times, its plates shatter and turn into countless tiny dust-like fragments. Immediately after, an incredibly massive humanoid light and shadow swept out from the shattered planet, standing on the planet belt of Jupiter and looking back deeply for a few moments before disappearing. Survivors on floating islands around the world are like their home planet. My mentality has collapsed. What is this? Is our home planet an egg? What kind of thing is that hatched? I haven't seen it clearly either. Please, no matter what kind of treasure you are, please make sure to take us to conquer the stars and the sea together. Where is the one person who has agreed to achieve success? Technically speaking, we are all children of our mother planet's milk siblings. The transition animation is completed without any extra explanation, and the scene returns to calmness, flashing a mysterious text that has never been seen before and cannot be described in words. Empty island subordinate. Li Tsang, Tsang, Island Area. 8.03 by 8.56, Prayer, Communication. The meaning of the text automatically comes to mind. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Floating Island. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Floating Island. The interface, which means communication, exchange, or can be translated as communication, forum, constantly refreshes the content at an astonishing speed. Almost in the blink of an eye, millions of posts presented in the form of text titles appear and are submerged. Help. Please, give me some water to drink. Who am I? Where am I? Home, land, and a few cows. Where are my beloved red shorts? Major discovery. Pray for the resurrection of the deceased. Blood and tear history. Never pray to exchange for food. Never pray to exchange for food. Never pray to exchange for food. 300 gene of spoiled dead pork only buys 2 black flour mantou. Friends from the original Xinjiang area come and exchange ideas. Floating Island has conditions to merge, survivors can team up with each other. The victims of the apocalyptic catastrophe have a very broken mentality, as can be seen from the exponential increase in the number of posts that are known to be of no use. 3 days have passed, and this section has always been like this. Without the unscrupulous management and operation personnel, there is no familiarity with the top, hot search, and normal reading records that cannot be further familiarized with. In short, the vast amount of content is constantly being refreshed, like the junk data cluster attack commonly used by hackers attacking servers. Posts from the first second are not sure where to find them, and meaningful information is rarely captured. Moreover, more survivors are busy in dire straits, and there is no way to put aside this blind water post. A private chat suddenly popped up. Si, Fu, Xing, he. Teacher Tsang, how is the situation on your side? My floating island is drifting towards you, and the progress stripes are not moving. What's the matter? Is this broken interface or are we too far away? Li Tsang cannot provide an answer to this question. Si, Fu, Xing, he. How is your illness? I've been floating for 3 days, but it's not about bringing back your warm ashes in the past. Tsang. Don't call me Teacher Tsang. Also, is it really appropriate for you to name me like this? I can't die for now, and the flesh on my back is not very noticeable. Doctors have mentioned that the abnormally enlarged vertebrae in the later stage will compress the spinal cord and surrounding tissues, which may cause paralysis. Tsang. I hooked a drifting wild island with a rope made of bed sheets and steel bars, dug up a wild rose that could be eaten, and had some shepherd's purse and grass. I was still stewing vegetables on the fire. Si, Fu, Xing, he. Nima, you should have listened to me finish speaking. Oh, brothers who pee and mud together since childhood, how important is eating. The shepherd's purse in the can was completely cooked into a green paste. Li Tsang felt helpless and blew a few times, biting his teeth and swallowing it. Thanks to Li Tsang smoking, he always keeps a lighter in his pocket. Otherwise, where else can we have hot meals in these 3 days, relying on those restless fire stars all over the sky? Most smokers have one problem. You can smoke my cigarette for a few tens of yuan, but if you take my 1 yuan lighter, I will definitely play my life with you. Li Tsang held a green plastic 1 yuan lighter with a beautiful swimsuit pattern printed on it, which was still more than half angry, and his expression was very devout. Ngong, you never say thank you for your meal. In the future, I will light a good cigarette for you. If I press a cigarette below 100 yuan, I will be like a hammer. Boiled shepherd's purse in water, my mouth is full of bitterness. The heat of this thing is the same as the law in the Philippines, equivalent to the shrimp and beef on the packaging of instant noodles. People with low emotional intelligence say it doesn't have it, while those with high emotional intelligence describe it as a pattern for reference only. In short, comparing pancakes to satisfy hunger, hoping for plums and quenching thirst is a bit practical. It's a very limited throw, and it's true that you don't feel hungry, but at least you can feel the weight and volume in your stomach well. In short, it's much stronger than stomach strengthening and digestive tablets. Returning to the prayer interface, hesitating to enter the description. Cure, delete, inhibit abnormal spinal hyperplasia. The reply font provided on the prayer interface is as red as blood, insufficient resources. Destiny coins. Li Tsang is a bit irritable. Give more hints, you are. What the hell is this? His mother fortune coin? I'm afraid I didn't dip the instructions into the sauce when installing the system, did I? He touched the jagged spine with his back hand. There is almost no sensation in the skin, and the tactile sensation transmitted by the hands is no different from touching the back of a crocodile turtle. Before the disaster, Li Tsang had been hospitalized for quite a long time, with 26 spinal segments proliferating, compressing the spinal cord and skull inward, muscle and vascular tissue outward, and a protruding head angle of the atlas at the same time. There are several related or unrelated complications as gifts, and all medical methods are useless. The degree of illness is considered the primary index included in the industry's conscience textbooks. The good news is that all necessary treatments are free. The bad news is that treatment is always free. Death is not afraid of death. How can a foodie be called afraid of death? Foodies are afraid of not being able to eat and starve to death. Shrinking in the corner, Litsang began to wait for the rabbit. If the floating islands are close enough, they will attract each other, and the larger ones will pull the smaller ones, causing them to deviate slightly from the original path. And as Litsang did before, symbolically tying the island with simple ropes can to some extent slow down the speed of its drift. Moreover, each survivor's floating island can annex smaller floating islands to increase their own volume. Litsang speculates that the island area of the annexator must be at least tens or hundreds of times larger than that of the annexated. In the past 3 days, Litsang has annexed 4 floating islands, no larger than a basin, with minimal changes in area that are almost imperceptible to the naked eye. Like the floating island where wild roses were dug up before, there was no intention of being swallowed up at all. Taking a few more sips of salty and astringent rainwater, Litsang felt a slight prickling sensation on his tongue, and he felt that his strength had slightly recovered. Suppressing the urge to uproot the wild rose and take a few bites, he continued to stare at a floating island that had just emerged from the haze with a highly regular trajectory. For the past 3 days, it has appeared on the left side of Litsang floating island along the established route every dusk, drawing a circular arc and then slowly slipping away. Litsang was convinced that every path it passed was gradually approaching him, and this time, the closest distance had reached the point where the rope hook could reach. Bang! The floating island shattered the half-meter diameter soil and rock blocks in front of it, at a very fast speed. He only has one chance. Right now. The rope with a steel hook tied at the top spun a few times in his hand and flew out with a whoosh, hitting the edge of the floating island firmly. Got it. The 2 floating islands with completely different directions suddenly straightened the ropes. It's hard to imagine that 2 huge floating islands are being twisted and twisted by such a small and weak hand-rubbed cloth rope, as if hitting a ball. 2 empty islands collided with each other like they had no weight or hardness, and eventually stuck together tightly. Bully. End of this chapter. Chapter 3 is about people, but not entirely. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 is about people, but not entirely. The sound is broken. The area of this island is at least several times that of Litsang floating sky island. On top of it stands half a dilapidated old blue stone tiled house. The main house has collapsed, but the side rooms remain intact, with chimneys. In front of the house is a blue stone walkway that extends all the way to the corner of the wall. The collapsed courtyard wall is made of blue bricks, burying more than half of the flowers and plants. Even if it is fragmented, it can still be seen that the owner of this small courtyard is a very delicate person. The original appearance of the green plants, rockeries, and ponds can be vaguely seen in the courtyard, and the scenery is well arranged. This aesthetic cost is not something that ordinary people can play with. It must be the kitchen, it must be the kitchen. Now is not the time to cultivate artistic cells. Litsang did not pay too much attention to others and rushed up like a rabbit. There are several earthenware kimchi jars in the yard, almost completely broken. The rotten kimchi is covered with a layer of blistering white film, emitting a foul odor. The green water in the pond also has a muddy smell. The 4-finger-thick cedar door with a frame, half leaning on the ground. As soon as he entered the room, Litsang immediately retreated at a faster speed. Kitchen. But someone. A dirty figure, leaning against the wall, huddled in the shadow. In the 3 days since the disaster occurred, it was the first time Litsang had encountered a floating island where survivors lived. Suddenly, the emotions that emerged were only nervousness, very nervous, bewildered and helpless. Who are you? Where am I? Why are you motionless? Do you want to take the opportunity to ambush me? Should we team up or compete on the spot? Social anxiety is too difficult. Cough, friend. No response. Just as Li Tsang thought he had unfortunately died, the figure suddenly erupted and almost crossed a distance of 4 or 5 meters in one step, knocking Li Tsang and the half-leaning door frame out directly. Li Tsang rolled out 7 or 8 meters away, his back knotted firmly against the courtyard wall, and the old blood from the collision almost sprayed out directly. Where the fuck is the power that a serious person should have? A head of sticky black hair hung long down the neck, with red eyes that could hardly be seen as white. The left face is still normal, with a thick layer of crocodile skin like keratin on its right half, irregularly embedded with some scales. It extends from the right half of the face all the way to the right neck, back, and chest. Its front right arm is completely covered by the thick keratin layer, and there is a sharp green bone spur bent at the elbow. The palms and feet are 4 or 5 times the size of a normal person, and the nails are pitch black, at least 5 inches long. All skin covered in the stratum corneum seems incompatible with normal skin, with a deep blood opening and continuous dripping of oil, body fluids, and dark red blood. WDNMD. This guy, who is similar to but not entirely human, made Li Tsang's goosebumps bulge all over his body in an instant, giving the impression that it was more terrifying than a humanoid monster. Li Tsang's sense of fear was extremely amplified, and his back felt as cold as a falling valley. Hee hee. A few low growls rolled out from the throat of the humanoid monster. His mouth was wide open, revealing 6 extremely prominent sharp teeth. His saliva dripped, and his crimson and purple eyes seemed to be that of a mentally ill person who had been hungry for half a lifetime. The look at Li Tsang was no different from that of a pig's elbow. It can be seen that this thing, like him, is hungry and anxious. Li Tsang rolled and dodged the monster's attack, his posture awkward but very practical. The monster was not as agile and even looked a bit weak. It stumbled and crashed into the half-collapsed courtyard wall, blowing out bursts of dust. Coincidentally, the already crumbling wall was thrown into the monster's soul, completely collapsing, with rubble and tiles hitting the monster head on and head on. Opportunity. Li Tsang was very decisive, crawling and grabbing 2 pieces of bricks, and swung them round to illuminate the monster's genitals, which were too big. The dirty and foul-smelling bodily fluids suddenly splattered. Li Tsang dared not let these unidentified liquids get on his body, so he quickly retreated. Monsters roar wildly surprisingly, as if nothing had happened. Waving his arm was like a sweeping. What long arms! Bang! Li Tsang couldn't dodge and was hit hard in the abdomen. The shepherd's purse he had just eaten was smashed and vomited directly. Its power is not insignificant. 3 days before the disaster occurred, this elbow would have been worth at least a CT package from hair to heels from the second hospital. It's not something that can be afforded without 8,000 yuan. It won't work for now. People's hearts are not ancient. The brief confrontation clearly told Li Tsang that if the monster successfully escaped from the rubble, his most dignified way of death would be to slide up and feed it. Li Tsang stubbornly got up and stood on the pile of broken bricks, making inhumane and crazy attacks on the monsters that were half buried inside and unable to move. I don't know how many bricks were smashed, but the monster's hard and outrageous head was almost smashed into a puddle. The exposed arm gradually drooped weakly, leaving only the undead muscles twitching and spasming. Hoo hoo hoo. He sat on the ground, sticking out his tongue like a dog. I used up all the energy to breastfeed, struggled twice but couldn't stand up. Until now, Li Tsang began to feel scared. I was already covered in hot sweat, and a layer of white hair and cold sweat came out from my back. The salty and pungent stench emanating from the monster's body drifted in waves, and after some thought, he found a few broken pieces of wood to fork the monster out of the pile of bricks and stones. It is significantly taller than Li Tsangman, who is over 1.8 meters tall, almost 2 meters tall, extremely strong, and its muscles look like sculptures. Except for the eerie scales or parts of the body that can be called bone armor, its exposed skin is also not very normal. The blood vessels are dark and twisted, and the muscles have a faint dark blue color. On the contrary, the skin is extremely fair and smooth, with almost no pores visible. Caucasians envy and cry directly. It was wearing a tattered and unsightly assault suit, overalls, and a string of wooden beads on its wrist that had been contaminated by bodily fluids and blood, making its original appearance indistinguishable, as if telling the story of its owner's former human identity. Li Tsang opened his mouth and remained silent for a while. The mother planet is cracking apart, and many survivors are still busy posting. The appearance of this monster in front of them appears so ordinary. However, the monster's head was hammered into Sakuma, but the body showed activity that violated the biological knowledge Li Tsang had learned many years ago. Its head. No, vertebrae, skull fragments, and pale creamy substance with blood veins like chewing gum, pulling the threads together, constantly twitching and wriggling. These things are haphazardly combined together, forming a strange and eerie mass on the monster's cavity that makes the scalp tingle. The blood vessels and tendons curl up like tentacles, climbing around as if to restore their original appearance. However, the next second, a poorly shaped object burst, which was as tragic as the mitosis of Guilingeo on the ground, still bubbling non-stop, squeezing out strands of green and yellow odor. Then continue the irregular combination arrangement and grow into a ball. Explode again, persevere in a cycle. Such a vivid scene made Li Tsang feel hungry. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Fate Coins. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Fate Coins. After the brothers finish sweeping the survival supplies and the rope is untied, this broken body will follow the floating island and wield a sword to the ends of the world. Are you just blooming a flower to care about my bird business? Salt. Oil. Sichuan pepper. Soy sauce consumes oil, 5 fragrances, cinnamon, and various seasonings. Half a bag of 25 kilograms of rice, a small can of millet, a bag of 10 kilograms of unopened Wadeli flour, a string of red chili peppers, and half a hanging garlic. People leave their voices and geese pluck their feathers. Li Tsang doesn't want to let go of anything. The owner of this courtyard has a rich reserve of resources, which makes one's scalp tingle. How did he do it? How was this floating island managed? Anong, please accept my humble respect. People are more infuriating than others. When the disaster occurred, my buddies only had a plate of stomach-strengthening and digestive pills and 2 bottles of salt water that had been suspended halfway. Why can he save so much useful things in the cyberpunk disaster where the earth cracks like fireworks? This guy is not the homeowner, clearly a big landlord. Unfortunately. No one left, no food to eat. Is this luck exchanged for life? That's not necessary to duck. When he saw half a slice of salted pork hanging on the beam, his eyes immediately turned blue. The tiles were blue. Half a fan of pork with ribs weighs only about 20.30 pounds, which is already very dry. The surface is covered with white-gray short fuzzy hair, covered with a dirty layer of black salt, Sichuan pepper, and pepper grains, making it look very dry. It looks so fragrant. After eating grass roots and tree bark for 3 days, I almost couldn't gather all the guanine soil to summon the divine dragon. I was so hungry that I wished I could stew myself in an iron pot. What is the mentality of seeing big fat sun? From the moment he caught sight of this salty meat, Li Tsang's stomach vigorously sang a war song, with a loud bang, beating gongs, drums, and playing swona, as if afraid he wouldn't feel it. Wait, what is that? From afar, the sparkling green light rose gracefully at the contact point between the 2 islands, seemingly undergoing a wonderful transformation. Li Tsang felt a sense in his heart and took a few steps. With 1 foot on his own floating island, he summoned a prayer coin. Empty island subordinate. Li Tsang, Tsang, island area. 8.09 by 8.96, under consolidation, prayer, communication hush. Long, grown up. Almost every second, the number of the island area jumps up, although it is only a slight change to the second decimal place. How could this be swallowed again? It's unreasonable. However, mind it. Things on the island. Is it all mine now? Is even the island mine now? If you say that, I won't be hungry anymore. Excited for a while, I still have to do what I need to do. There is food available on the floating island, and the island owner is still hungry. Continue. Found a big iron pot and was smashed by the beam of the house, a horse spoon, flat, a triangular iron frame that has not been used for an unknown amount of time, on which 3 iron chains hang a cast iron pot with ears. The pot is half a finger thick. Intact and undamaged. This thing is not cheap. The pot was clearly carefully maintained before being put away, with a strong smell of polymerized oil. There are still a few undamaged bowls and bowls in the cabinet. A large water tank sat on the slate floor, perfectly blocked by the slanting beam of the house, without any damage or leakage. Inside is half a vat of water, cold, clean and clear. Safe strategic reserve materials. Litsang lit a fire in the yard on the spot, burning the broken wood after the yard collapsed. The coal balls, honeycomb coal, and neatly stacked wood in the kitchen didn't dare to move at all. Biting his teeth fiercely, he cut a pound-sized piece from that half of the salted meat and let it sizzle on the fire. The kitchen knife scraped off the carbon-black dirt on the surface and washed it clean with rainwater. He can't even bear to wash the rice anymore. Well, it looks pretty clean anyway. Add half a gourd ladle of clean water, throw it into the pot with the bacon, cover it with a lid, and cook. The firewood was very hard, and in no time, a tempting aroma of rice and meat came from the pot, smelling oily. The rice was quickly cooked, with shiny oil stains on each grain of rice. A layer of burnt yellow pot was curled up at the edge, forming a natural large bowl in the cast iron pot to hold the rice and bacon. It's so hot and sizzling, Litsang trembled as he took out the bacon and placed it on the chopping board. Mainly excited. The kitchen knife swung and cut into thin, large pieces with a snap. Lean meat blushes, while fatty meat is crystal clear like ground glass. A large pot of rice, covered with slices of salted meat, was already drunk before Litsang could eat it. It has to be said that the owner of the salted meat restaurant is definitely a master. From the overall decoration of the yard and kitchen utensils, it is likely that this monster-turned homeowner is a wealthy person who came to the countryside or suburbs in pursuit of a refined lifestyle. The salted meat cooked together with rice is the king of salted meat. It is moderately salty, fat but not greasy. After taking a bite, the lean meat is tender and the fat splatters, followed by a large bite of clear and crystal clear rice. Whoa, 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 whoa. No matter what other people's situation is, Litsang feels like he has come back to life at this moment. Open the crystal coin and watch the frequency hopping of the island area, while fiercely chewing on a large piece of fat. After searching and scratching my stomach for a while, I summarized 2 words. Dinner. What a his mother beauty. How fragrant. The green light at the contact point between the 2 islands has become increasingly prosperous. Initially only over 2 feet wide, it has now approached 1 meter and is continuously encroaching and merging with each other. Litsang still boldly held the bowl and supported the hot hanging pot rack, and said with a majestic voice. This is the land I have laid. This is probably a typical case of being full and stretched out. Until Litsang filled his stomach and began to organize useful supplies in the new territory, besides food and water, the body of the monster was still persistently working on it. The corpse cavity grew into a huge, brightly colored trumpet flower full of tentacles. The tentacles curled and stretched uncontrollably, as if grabbing something from the air, very ferocious, looking very restrained. I'm just a good guy, can you really bloom? At the center of the trumpet flower with a diameter exceeding half a meter, there is a green crystal coin attached to the thick stamen-like antennae, which is 80% similar to the prayer coin on the island. Fate coin. Litsang's heart was pounding wildly. This thing seems to have a strange and powerful attraction to people, causing their inner possessiveness to expand and they are eager to put coins in their pockets. Li Tsang was not overwhelmed and instinctively stopped halfway with his hand reaching towards the trumpet flower. However, the coin in the trumpet flower seemed to have been attracted by him, falling off the stamen on its own and sliding out in an unbiased parabolic trajectory with a snap, falling into Li Tsang's palm. Newton would secretly wipe away tears when he saw this curve. As soon as he touched the crystal coin, a cold and refreshing feeling spread from the palm of his hand to the back of his head, as if he had walked into an air-conditioned room from the scorching summer of 40 degrees Celsius, instantly refreshing himself. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Osteogenesis is a genetic disease. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Osteogenesis is a genetic disease, fate coin. Li Tsang is 100% certain that this thing is a fate coin. Saying you're not excited is pure nonsense. Who wants to live well in that crowded little box? Well, it's definitely crowded. Judging from the rate of bone hyperplasia in Li Tsang, it is estimated that even the small box cannot fit after his cremation. I found a rope to tie the monster's body and dragged it all the way to my own floating island, summoning a prayer coin. Suppressing excitement and trembling, input a line of words. Treatment of spinal dysplasia. Sure enough, with the physical object of the coin of fate, it will be different. Instead of being mysterious, 2 lines of mysterious text popped up directly. Healing. 6396 fate coins, suppression. 788.4 fate coin. The process is slightly different, but the outcome is the same. Li Tsang's heart cooled down to py. Gone. Isn't it necessary for over 6,000 monsters to save my life? Rounded up to 1 billion, it's the first time in my life that I realize I'm so valuable. Am I the protagonist? Is this beaver? The beaver has died. His gaze fell on the corpse of the monster. Will this thing grow coins and have some value in itself? As Li Tsang wished. The scattered green light spots of the praying coin enveloped the monster's corpse, seemingly making it look less disgusting, which is the meaning of being selected. 2 options appear on the interface. Sacrifice, prayer. Li Tsang frowned. Is that all? Without even a hint. I always feel like this interface is a semi-finished product. The sacrifice is likely to receive a destiny coin reward, right? As for prayers, everything is possible. Wait, since everything is possible, he did not make a choice, but instead entered another line of attribute password. Detailed prayer prompts and explanations, guidance on additional content, optimization and screening of practical forum content, must pay 17.9 fate coins. Black merchants. Detailed prayer prompts and explanations, guidance on additional content, need to pay 9.3 fate coins, further reduction. Add instructions and prompts related to prayer, need to pay 2.4 fate coins, add prayer explanation, need to pay 0.3 fate coins. Pay. The fate coin in hand drifts towards the prayer coin, about 1/3 of which automatically shatters into powder and is absorbed by the vortex below the interface. Turning back and selecting the monster corpse again, there are indeed many additional information added to the interface. Branch 1. Sacrifice, obtain 8.5 fate coins and other random intent items. Branch 2. Prayer, pay destiny coins to transform it into disposable destiny servants. The type of destiny servant is to be named, and 0.1 coins are required for each activity day. The daily loss range is limited to floating islands and floating islands within a radius of 1 kilometer. Destiny servant inherits and dominates physical fitness. 0.1 coin preserve its original quality. 1.9 coins inheritance or not, fate servants have the ability to grow. Sure enough, the 0.3 coin didn't float. It's easy to understand the suffocating power of monsters and the difference in the amount of coins consumed by fate. You get what you pay for. Li Tsang had reason to speculate that if the monster hadn't had nothing to fill its stomach since the disaster occurred, it was very likely that when it knocked it down for the first time, it would have turned into a puddle of mosaic and been happily licked clean by the monster. Choose Branch 2 to inherit the Dominator's physical fitness. The remaining 2/3 of the fate coins shattered once again, transforming into scattered green spots that slowly penetrated the monster's corpse. The next second, the headless body of the monster stood up straight, the wound on the cavity healed, and the trumpet flower retracted, quickly returning to the shape of its head. The upper and lower muscles of the body contract slightly, and the body size has decreased slightly. The junction between the stratum corneum and relatively normal skin and flesh automatically heals, no longer exuding disgusting bodily fluids. The round eyes were no longer the crimson color they used to be, but the visible green light of the same fate coin. Very strong, very magical. In the next second, the monster's back suddenly made a crisp bone-cracking sound, and its spine twisted and bulged like a huge centipede under the skin. The monster's erect body instantly hunched in half. I pay %UN #XX. Kick your lungs. Black-hearted maggot. I am really a beautiful C language expert, just casually sending an encrypted call. Fortunately, with the help of their hearts and minds, the monsters can move freely and operate perfectly without any leakage. Walk, run, jump, move bricks, but it seems that the intelligence is not very high, and it is quite confusing to execute some complex verbal instructions and fine operations. Summary. This is a laborer who has no brain and only knows how to do rough work. The good news is that the refreshing and pungent smell on this product has completely disappeared, and it even smells like fresh soil just dug out of the ground. Naming. Brother Sure, confirmation of fate servants in the new category, belonging to the refined branch of the third-level classification. When any survivor touches the third-level classification directory, the name will be forcibly used. Do you want to disclose the conversion formula of fate servants in this category to everyone, in order to obtain a profit of 0.1 fate hard coin for every conversion of one fate servant in this variety? Oh, roar. And this kind of operation, the previous 0.3 coins were not spent, so I'm afraid even this prompt will be swallowed privately, right? Announce. Intention confirmation, already announced. Conversion formula will be visible when survivors touch the level 3 classification directory. Li Tsang waved his hand and asked the freshly baked corpse brother to tidy up the courtyard of the new territory. He calculated that it would take another 3 days for the new territory to be completely annexed. The brick and stone courtyard wall above had already collapsed by more than half, and was violently disturbed by Brother Big Corpse. There was almost nothing left, and it happened to be completely demolished. The only room in the house that serves as a kitchen is still in good condition, but it needs to be topped up again. Half of the main room is left, and the beams, bricks, tiles, and collapsed wall materials are still there. With the addition of courtyard wall materials, it is not a problem to rebuild it on the original foundation. Finally, there will be a place to shelter from the wind and rain. Even though he was artificially cut corners, Big Corpse Brother still belongs to the category of strong and powerful individuals, with adults carrying broken rafters as thick as their waist and 5 or 6 meters long. There's absolutely no sign of being terminally ill. Why is it that my friend is only one step away from high paraplegia? Sure enough, it's still species isolation watching Big Corpse Brother walk around the dilapidated house, carrying out various materials with explosive mushroom-like dust. Li Tsang was very pleased. The old god took a big sip of sweet water in the jar. Have a good little life. After resting for a while, Li Tsang entered the wing room. Don't be fooled by the fact that Brother Big Corpse's predecessor arranged the yard in an orderly and aesthetically pleasing manner. He is actually a messy person in daily life. Li Tsang even dug up several tangled old rags in a kitchen cabinet, all dirty and rotten together. The clothes in the big cabinet are not much torn, just shake the dust off them and they can be worn directly. Washing clothes is beyond imagination. He doesn't have such luxurious water storage. The stove and some mud can be completely used, but the outer chimney needs to be ventilated and raised a bit. This toss and turn, the bright moon hangs high. Li Tsang had no conditions to light up the lights and boil oil, so he had to stop work. After a thorough search, besides tidying up the kitchen, there were also unexpected gains. He found 2 tangled corn cobs and a bag of infested soybeans on the beam of the house, which could be used for picking and picking. Carefully rub the corn off the stick one by one, pick out the soybeans that have not been eaten by insects, and then find 2 plastic bottles to soak in water separately, so as to have a higher germination rate. Tomorrow, have Brother Big Corpse dig over the land on the island again. I, the flower grower, arrange. The next morning, the sun had just shed a few radiances from the hazy smoke and clouds, and Li Tsang climbed up from the corner of the wall. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Clothing, Food, Housing, and Transportation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Clothing, Food, Housing, and Transportation. Li Tsang slept with a clear and refreshed mind, while Brother Big Corpse didn't need to rest. Although due to the long-lost wild father, well, let's change to a more polite name. Although he was forced to inherit a strange bone hyperplasia disease due to his cheap adoptive father's poverty, Big Corpse Brother is not at all hesitant in his work. Last night, I tossed and turned all night, and the entire yard has been tidied up. Wood, bricks, tiles, and broken furniture excavated from the ruins were arranged into several garbage piles in different categories, as well as a 90% new diesel generator buried in the ruins that was basically undamaged and half a barrel of gasoline. Crazy joy. Isn't this a direct leap from the Stone Age to the electric steam age? The son of heavenly selection is nothing more than that. The sack of a ball, there seems to be something wrong. Diesel generator. Gasoline. Gonli Nyan. The original floor of the house was paved with thick bluestone slabs, which are still very intact. Although there are several crisscrossing cracks, they do not affect the use at all and do not require relaying. He commanded Big Brother to dig soil and mud, preparing to rebuild the house. There is not much rainwater left in the reserve, so we have to simplify it a bit and try to manually pile up those huge blue stones, mixed with dry grass and mud, in order to save a lot of water. Such blatant cutting corners has turned the original main roof into a wing room. The house is basically a 6x4m long strip, with a ceiling height of less than 2.5 meters. The left door is even shorter than Li Tsang's height, so the cat has to walk in with a waist. There is only one window, and the lighting is very poor, but this is already the only remaining intact plastic window. 2 days later, by moving the iron frame hospital bed into the house, Li Tsang's new home was considered completed. As soon as the door closed, the scorching sparks and the pungent smell of sulfur disappeared, and Li Tsang had his first beautiful dream in a few days. It was already 10 minutes past noon when he woke up again, and he was awakened from hunger. The lunch was cabbage and rice porridge. After the yard was completely cleaned up, Li Tsang found a small piece of cabbage field under the fallen brick wall. The cabbage, covered in tender green and white, was mixed with several small rapeseed trees that stood out among the chickens, yet they all stubbornly survived. Boil rice porridge with cabbage, add some oil, salt and white pepper. Li Tsang ate like a wolf, swearing that he had never eaten such a delicious meal in his life except for the last meal of salted pork. After 2 days of soaking, corn seeds and soybeans are mostly plump and white, with tender sprouts emerging. At this point, he couldn't completely immerse himself in the water. Li Tsang found a small piece of rag and washed it again. He wrapped it clean and then drizzled it with water from the tank and placed it in a warm and sunny place to promote germination. But the baby is tight, after all. This is related to the Sustainable Development Plan of 2 floating islands, 8*8 plus 16*16. The clear water in the big water tank is enough for Li Tsang to drink alone for 2 weeks, and even cooking may take 1 or 2 days off. As for toiletries, the rainwater has been completely dried up by the repaired house, and I can't even imagine it. The food is relatively abundant, and just the food released from the kitchen can be eaten for most of a month. In the past 2 days, there have been no other floating islands around. Li Tsang could only see the contours of some giant islands hidden in the smoke and clouds, swimming alone like giant whales, and his eyes were once very envious. Summon the prayer coin and open the communication interface. The densely packed posts are rapidly refreshing. At the end of the mountain and water, everything that could be used for sacrifice was set up. Finally, I found a floating island with a monster on it. I almost died on it. Is there anyone else who has also encountered zombie monsters? How did that thing come about? That thing used to be human. Will we also become that thing when we die? Will it be contagious if bitten people are infuriating compared to others? A few kilometers away from me, there is an island floating with a large water tower and a wheat field on it. It seems that the owner of the island is a beautiful girl. Hey, who will save me on the 6th day of survival on an empty island? The island covers an area of 19 by 21, with wooden bunkers, 9 by 6 vegetable fields, 6 rye bread in stock, 19 red wine, and 6 boxes of barley beer and several grains. The coordinates of the original 50-kilometer trajectory around the main peak fragments of the Karakoram Mountains can also be seen. It is very obvious that you can also see the nearby Longsdarv mountaineering. If you have friends nearby, please chat privately and exchange seeds, grains, bread, red wine, and beer for drinking water. Share some experience of using resources at hand to create simple tools to kill zombies. Discovered a huge empty island, which is visible to the naked eye as part of a certain urban block and is relatively well preserved. There are at least 3 large supermarkets, 1 to 2 pharmacies, clinics, and hardware stores, and a conservative estimate of at least 600 plus zombies. I have built my own floating bridge and hook lock, and I hope to explore it together with strong teammates. The harvest is 55 yuan, and I am interested in privacy. Sacrificed a strange zombie and received 19 coins. What is the use of fate coins? Nimas, can we add a coordinate function to this forum? I have a box of machetes in my hand and spent 6 coins to add a driving function to the floating island. The speed is 18 kilometers per hour. After 3 days of rotation, Nima didn't even touch a wild island with living people, resources, and even zombies. Ah, there are so many ruthless people. Li Tsang immediately threw away the feeling of complacency. Tsang. Old Wang, have you died yet? Si, Fu, Xing, he. I'll trick you into being a monkey. Don't call me Lao Zi Lao Wang. I'll die dead. I'm still waiting to bring your hot ashes back and scrape them off the newly repaired toilet. The meme of ashes can't pass, can it? Tsang. I think the title of Lao Wang is very suitable for you. By the way, using fate coins in the prayer interface can add a description function, which is very cheap. It only costs 0.3 coins and the entry, add prayer description, Zhong Pengzi's surname is Zhong, but the well-known nickname on the road is Lao Wang. You savor, you savor. Si, Fu, Xing, he. Got it, it's okay, Teacher Tsang. Si, Fu, Xing, he. Yesterday, I exchanged 8 taels of gold for 16.2 fate coins, but I don't know if I lost. Tsang, did you encounter a zombie? Tsang. If you really don't want to call me by name, you can also call me Dad. 8 taels of gold, did you rob the bank? Tsang. I have killed one before, and now I am a long-term worker in my family. I am very skilled at moving bricks, silk, women, awakening, river. Cow, Teacher Tsang. Let me tell you, be careful not to take your life for granted when you think you're going to die. I saw on the forum that praying for the resurrection of even the dead is not enough, just leaving ashes is not enough. Tsang. More than 6,000 fate coins, gone. Silk, women, awakening, river. Si, Fu, Xing, he. Ahem, let's not talk about this anymore. On the forum, there was a stupid guy who added a driving function to Kongdao. What's wrong with 6 fate coins? I just went to your location and navigated for only 0.6 coins. TSK, that guy looks down on the less intelligent Yazzie, Tsang. This is the reason why you haven't moved the stripes after climbing for 6 days. Compared to you, the green turtle is a supercar with added nitrogen peroxide. Silk, woman, wake up, river. Shit. Si, fu, xing, he. So it's nitrous oxide. Be careful of the chemistry teacher banging on your door in the middle of the night. Tsang. Is there such a good thing? Li Tsang remembers very clearly. He and Lao Zhong's high school chemistry teacher are young women with extremely attractive appearance and explosive figures. At most, they were only 20.6 or 7 when they were taught. Silk, women, wake up, river. Li Lei Si warning. Tsang. Li Tsang's heart trembled. I couldn't help but glance at the names that had been hidden in the list of friends that I could chat with privately, and Li Lizi was prominently listed. Si, fu, xing, he. By the way, I've been posting a lot these days. After the zombies are taken down, don't throw away the bodies. A lucky guy's corpse worship has become a hot commodity, creating something called alien bloodline endowing. The effect is that his blood becomes highly toxic to the zombies. 1 drop of blood mixed with some water can poison a strengthened zombie. Nima, isn't this a game skill? It's outrageous. So, remember to vote and collect to avoid premature death. Can you help recommend it to others? Only by meeting various indicators such as reading, recommending, tipping, and collecting during the new book period can books become better and better. As is well known, the better the grades, the longer the author's book will be written. So, please everyone. Ah yes, everyone remember to invest in us, you can earn a wave of starting point coins, including profits. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The pot comes from the sky. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The pot comes from the sky. Speaking of which, loneliness is also a quite scary thing. Usually, after talking to old Zhong, I wish I could use this slut's face to wipe the soles of my shoes. Now do you actually feel warm? Hiss, I feel like something's wrong with me. QTMD brothers, die and leave. Li Tsang kicked the prayer coin with a crisp and neat kick. The old clock across from him looked at the suddenly grayed out private chat interface. Brother Big Corpse consumes 0.1 coins per day and can be used for 3 more days without any replenishment. Li Tsang was actually a bit anxious in his heart. The cost of Lao Zhong locking the coordinates of Li Tsang's floating island is that his floating island cannot move at all, which means he cannot explore more wild islands. It can be seen that discounts have never been really cheap. Just like how you always talk about buying a small toilet when you hold it and vomit after drinking too much, whether it's putting your head or buttocks down, it's a bit difficult. So far, the infinite possibilities expressed by prayer are enough to prove that this is an open cheat that makes people salivate. But the available resources on the floating island are really limited, and every drop of water and grain of rice is related to how many more seconds he can live. Li Tsang was not willing to exchange any valuable living supplies in his hands for fate coins, even if that thing could make the big-headed corpse brother move. In other words, who would starve themselves to feed a monster corpse brother who had just established an intimate relationship. The prayer interface that had just dissipated suddenly lit up automatically, and there were obviously many more items on it: island annexation completed, resource integration in progress, empty island subordinate. Li Tsang, Tsang, island area. 19.64 by 24.96, fate servant. Brother corpse, fate coin. 0.2, prayer communication. Subsequently, the ground beneath my feet shook violently, and the 2 floating islands, which were originally less than 2 meters wide and tightly adjacent to each other, suddenly transformed into 2 eerie pieces of soft candy. They were twisted and shaped at will, but the ground and even the entire floating island did not produce even a small crack from beginning to end. This deformation is very rapid, and the 2 floating islands connected in a gourd shape merge into an inverted conical island in the blink of an eye. Ho, Li-tsang let out a small sigh. After the two islands merged into one, everything on the island remained roughly in the same orientation as before, with the new courtyard to the north, the ward to the south, and next to it were apple trees and wild roses. Wait a minute, Li-tsang stood in front of the apple tree, looking at the large area of reinforced concrete and tiled floor in the hospital ward, and summoned a prayer coin, sacrificed the concrete floor while retaining the steel bars and intact tiles. Confirm sacrifice. Twinkles of green light and mist rose from the ground, clinging to the ruins like life, until they were completely covered. Then, ding 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 dang, the ruins of concrete walls and the ground disappeared out of thin air, and a pile of steel bars fell to the ground with a crackling sound, shattering the floor tiles. Establishment of sacrifice, obtaining 0.7 fate coins and 21.5 kilograms cement, grab the grass. There are unexpected gains. Li-tsang looked at the floor tiles that were all smashed due to an operational error, pouting, sacrifice all the floor tiles. Confirm sacrifice, establishment of sacrifice, obtaining 0.003 fate coins. Prayer is a form of exchange or conversion that comes with a cost and effort, essentially a form of consumption. But sacrificing is very different. From the massive posts of survivors, it seems that sacrificing can be done with any item, regardless of its value. Of course, it may be that the definition of value in prayer coins is different from that of normal humans. Li-tsang seriously suspected that the true mastermind behind the prayers and sacrifices was the one who manipulated the earth like an egg. This thing seems to be a blatant flea on a bald head, right? It's a long way to go. Anyway, this land was completely cleared without any effort, and the strange use of sacrifice has increased. Next, Big Brother just needs to plow a few times and plant the beans and corn. Although he only had a few seeds that he couldn't even plant on more than 10 square meters of land, Li-tsang wouldn't mind it at all. Is the future predictable? The land is relatively moist and there is no extra water to irrigate it, but the survival rate of the seeds is unlikely to disappoint. Ridges of land exude the smell of moist fresh soil, which is very fresh. Li-tsang leaned on a small flower hoe that was not very convenient, showing the kindness of an old father on his face and smiling like a simple and silly person. It feels like it won't be long before this empty island can achieve sustainable development, and it's no longer a dream to support oneself. Why is it getting dark? It won't rain again, will it? Sure, it just started raining after planting the land. In the movie, I'm just a protagonist template holding grass or something. Behind and above, a huge floating island with a diameter of kilometers silently emerged from the rolling yellow clouds at a slow speed relative to itself, and ran straight towards Li-tsang. Li-tsang's floating island is only 400 square meters in size, and in front of this giant floating island, not even an ant can be counted, with a rhythm of being crushed in minutes. Bang! The small floating island is like leek leaves on its teeth, stubbornly embedded in the middle of the giant floating island base. This feeling is too strange, just like driving the 9-handed QQ novice you bought on the road, careful, both for yourself and your car, and for other experienced drivers, and then discovering a king of kings charging towards you with a front 4 and back 8-ton truck, and knocking you to pieces. The island has been displaced, and communication with Zhongjianzhang, Si, Fu, Xing, he, has lost signal, resulting in navigation failure. Oh my god! The loss is as high as 6 cents. The empty island was firmly stuck on top and pushed along by the huge island. Stone hammer, proper treatment for the protagonist. People sit at home, and food comes from the sky. You are directly planting rice in my stomach. Li-tsang's heart turned sideways, and he equipped Big Corpse Brother and climbed up from the base of the huge floating island. Reasonably, according to Big Corpse Brother's body shape and appearance, it must also be considered a hard accessory, and is a necessary accessory for home travel, killing people and smuggling goods. Floating island can be seen as an inverted cone, where the lower limbs are suspended by arm strength during climbing, and the difficulty can be imagined, especially for social animals like Li Tsang who have never been exposed to high-end sports such as climbing within 10 meters. Li Tsang felt like he was going dehydrated. Looking at Brother Big Corpse again, under its sharp teeth and claws, the stones are like slightly harder old tofu, with each step imprinted without any effort. In less than a second of contemplation, Li Tsang remained on Big Brother's back like an octopus. To support the family, it's not shabby. The height of the base of this huge floating island is definitely over a kilometer, and Big Corpse Brother climbed for half an hour, which made Li Tsang yawn several times halfway. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. In. Come on, Ben. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 In. Come on, Ben on a giant floating island. More than 30 survivors, of all ages and genders, held various rudimentary homemade weapons and formed a circle. This floating island belongs to a fragment of the urban-rural fringe of a certain city, and various resources will be very abundant. All the medicines, food, water sources, tools, and weapons we need can be found here. The speaker's voice is firm and powerful. Around 30 years old, tall and straight, with a handsome face. Unfortunately, there is a narrow scar from the lower jaw to the left face that disrupts the beauty. The wound is fresh and not completely scabbed, as if even the lower jaw has been injured. He was holding a composite bow with considerable deterrent power in his hand. I followed this empty island for 3 days and observed at least 600 monsters, zombies, and zombies. Whatever these things are called, but we only have 30 people. I believe I have already explained this very clearly to everyone before. Brother Zhao, can I join you? I have practiced athletics before and won't hold you back. Xin Liyu's tone is delicate and silly, hoping for a way out. Zhao Shiliang nodded slightly. All right, let's have you sister join us. Huang, sister. In law, Qin brothers, what do you think? No problem. A youthful and energetic little sister joined, which Huang Yu and Qin Jing couldn't resist. Huang Yu's wife was not so stingy, waving her hand to signal Xin Liyu to stand with her. Zhao Shiliang's group has no objections, which does not mean that others approve. Cough, Xiao Zhao, why don't you assign Yu to our group? The speaker's name is Jing Nanxiao, his beard and hair are half white, and he always wears a smile on his face. I'm 63 years old this year, and Lao Zhang and Lao Wang are a few years older than me. Only Xiao Zhang is a young person, so his efficiency in action is definitely not as high as yours. But resources are complementary. Our old friends are more experienced than your young people, and you have better physical strength. With Jing Nanxiao's words, the small group of 30 people immediately began to gossip and demanded to be reorganized. When we were building relationships before, we only focused on pleasing each other and sharing common topics. After consciously forming a group, there was even a group of young children from the 14th to the 5th year old, all of whom were women and elderly. After Jing Nanxiao's reminder, they finally felt it was not appropriate. Such a large empty island, the resources are definitely overflowing, but the biggest problem is that there are monsters inside, something that can easily kill people. Why do I have to be with you guys? Xin Liyu's face was full of displeasure. Just now, those aunties had been secretly mocking her for wearing short skirts and tattoos. While these old folks kept agreeing, their eyes were very dishonest. Resource complementarity is a ghost. Don't you want me to work for you? How can a little girl talk? She doesn't even understand the traditional virtues of respecting the old and loving the young. Young people nowadays. TSK. Is that how your parents taught you? Lao Zhang and Lao Wang shook their heads as they spoke, with a clicking sound and a feeling of the world's decline. The little girl Xin Liyu is usually only responsible for being as beautiful as a flower, and has not received such ridicule. You were not polite at the time, both inside and outside of the conversation. There are no traditional virtues. CTMD should learn more about them. A few unscrupulous old rascals, dare to peek at your aunt's chest, and not be afraid of their eyeballs falling out. Who wants to be with you? A few young men around looked at Jing Nanxiao and their eyes were immediately very unfriendly. Beauty is justice. Where is there a girl worth taking care of in this guy? What are you talking nonsense about? Jing Nanxiao and others didn't expect a pretty and friendly little girl to be so sharp-tongued, but they really didn't dare to speak sarcastically like they did just now. After all, it was their fault first, and now it's not a peaceful world, so they can only stand there awkwardly and mutter. A group of ants with an average age of 50+ interjected, "Xiao Zhao, why don't we just stop grouping? Let's act together. There are many people and power is great. Don't you often act like this in movies? It's so dangerous, and it's easy for each person to break down when separated." Yes, what Sister Wang said makes sense. That's right, why do we have to separate them? Some agreed, while others opposed, and the situation was very chaotic. Zhao Liliang rubbed his forehead. "Ladies and gentlemen, please don't be busy making noise. Can you listen to me for a few words?" Jing Nanxiao and Aunt Wang were the first to support Zhao Liliang. "That's it, don't make any noise." Zhao Shiliang nodded and smiled at the two groups of people. Now is not like before, it is an extraordinary period, and only by surviving can we continue to inherit the so-called virtues. Jing Nanxiao's smile gradually disappeared. There are a lot of monsters, and if a collective action startles a monster, with the weapons in our hands, it is almost 100% the end result of group annihilation. I will put the ugly words first. We must act in groups to share risks. If any group of people is careless, it is equivalent to buying time for other groups of people. Sacrificing is very meaningful. I think everyone understands what I mean. Of course, if it's my group who provoked the monster, I promise we will try our best to create the maximum noise and attract the attention of the monsters on the island for everyone. Those who are unwilling can leave now. Aunt Wang was stunned. To say something very selfish, I really can't explore this huge floating island alone. There are many resources on the island, and everyone lives on their own. I free up the coordinates of this island not to save the world and lead everyone, but for this simple reason of survival. As for team building, when we entered the island, we had already spontaneously formed small groups due to various reasons. Now, whether we need to regroup or anything else, I don't want to or have no right to ask, but at least we need someone willing to join you. That's all we have to say. Brother Huang, Sister Law, Qin brothers, and Sister Liu, let's go to the island. Humph. Xin Liu rolled his big white eyes with an air and let out a cold snort to Jing Nanxiao. By the way, Zhao Shiliang waved his hand and a strange green pattern lit up on his wrist. Don't forget, before landing on the island, everyone had already signed an agreement through a prayer coin, with a total of 18 contents. It is not allowed to attack each other or maliciously affect others, otherwise all profits will be evenly distributed to other people's empty islands. Jing Nanxiao's mouth twitched, before he could say anything, he heard the sudden sound of heavy objects falling from the edge of the island, which frightened him and made him choke back. Li Tsang, who was thrown up from under the cliff by Brother Big Corpse, patted the dust on his body and picked up his backpack. Zhao Shiliang frowned and recalled in his heart the list of people he had released from the coordinates. He was very certain that everyone had arrived. Are you from the island that the floating island just hit? This unlucky guy didn't hang up. It's just a small island with a diameter of 20 meters, obviously not a strong person. Zhao Liliang has no intention of throwing an olive branch at Li Tsang. The cost of renegotiating the contract is high, and adding an extra player is unlikely to affect the overall situation. You are very lucky, there are many resources on this island. Zhao Liliang kept a smile and didn't say much. Until the end, Jing Nanxiao and Aunt Wang did not wait for anyone willing to join their group. The 30 people were divided into 5 groups and entered the depths of the island from all directions. At this moment, Li Tsang waved his hand and let the big corpse brother hanging on the island cliff climb up. Parking in progress, unable to detach autonomously, automatic detachment time remaining at 71.55.09 seconds, a thin mist of light faintly surged out of the arm, which was a hint from the prayer coin. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. The plot is sweeter than first love. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. The plot is sweeter than first love. Choosing a random direction, Li Tsong began to take action. This floating island is roughly elliptical in shape, with a diameter that appears to be only a few to 1 kilometers, but it stands at a height of over 1,000 meters from the base to the upper surface, which is very astonishing. The buildings on the island remain relatively intact and have not collapsed into a shape that parents do not recognize. Wait a moment. Isn't this the Yanchuan development zone? The layout of Jingyuan community, with 3 tall and 2 short buildings, is vivid in my mind. How could Li Tsong not remember that he had just spent 700,000 yuan here to pay the down payment for this micro-community before admission? Yanchuan Second Hospital is hundreds of meters away from Jingyuan community. Good guy, I'm a pure unlucky person, right? If the ward hadn't cracked like that, wouldn't he be living happily on this massive floating island with abundant resources now? This crime is not entirely clear, but Li Tsong thought for a moment, right? The number of people living in the development zone is a bit low, but just now Zhao Liliang said that only about 600 monsters were observed. What about people? Where have humans gone? Li Tsong threw away the dangerous thoughts in his mind and ran quickly along the asphalt road covered with huge gaps. Soon, he arrived at the area with buildings, and commanded Big Corpse Brother to pull out an inch-thick steel bar to defend himself from the collapsed buildings on the roadside. Most ordinary households have limited supplies, and Li Tsong has no interest in searching. Chinyan Grain and Oil Snacks. This is a 2-story self-built small building with an outdated sign. A huge crack divides the building into 2 parts, tilting in a V-shaped shape towards both sides. The small shop belongs to the type of self-operated business, which not only includes rice, noodles, grains, oil, and non-staple food, but also includes baby products, commonly used hardware, vegetables and fruits, making it a complete set. The store door was wide open in all directions, with bags of rice, flour, grains, and oil scattered all over the ground. Fruits and vegetables had already rotted away, and there were no signs of anyone cleaning them up. Li Tsong couldn't help but frown. With so many residential communities around, isn't there even a hidden survivor? You should know that even the scenic garden he bought has a permanent residence of over 700 households relying solely on him and Brother Big Corpse. We cannot bring back too much. There is a small box truck parked in front of the store, and the keys are still there. But Li Tsong didn't dare to move. The engine of this thing was very quiet. On the contrary, the 80% new inverted donkey next to him overjoyed Li Tsong, effortlessly loading hundreds of pounds of rice, flour, grains, and oil, and making almost no noise when pedaling. This thing may not be the owner's pet, and the bearings have been carefully maintained. Riding this thing is not difficult, and Big Corpse Brother's elm head can also be easily controlled, saving Li Tsong a lot of strength. He arrived at the edge of the empty island, and Big Corpse Brother carried the supplies along the cliff and sent them back to the island. Li Tsong found that the ground of other empty islands was on par with this giant island, except for himself, who was embedded on a cliff over 1,000 meters below. Okay, don't worry about anyone having an idea for his ready-made supplies. He couldn't bring things back to his own island from under a cliff over 1,000 meters long, even if he wanted to get something for nothing, so he could only stare blankly. After several trips back and forth, Brother Big Corpse was already proficient in riding the donkey upside down and delivering goods to his doorstep. Li Tsong decided not to follow and searched in a small area around the grain and oil store. Gas stations, tobacco hotels, digital stores, clothing stores, fabric stores, luggage stores, hardware stores, fishing gear stores, plumbing and electrical material pipeline stores, agricultural supplies stores. The urban-rural fringe, more accurately, is a development zone that has not yet been fully developed, which is great. Although the sparrow is small, it has all 5 organs. In short, as long as the distance is not too far, Tong Tong has not been let go. He even stopped in front of a glass display cabinet in a gold shop for a while, not daring to smash it, completely unable to find where the alarm device and backup power source were. He is not sure if this thing will sound an alarm or quietly connect to the police station after it is smashed. After all, I don't have any experience in this area. I really want to find a professional who has experienced it before to give me some advice. Well, if it were the former, then his over 120 pounds would probably be enough to just leave here. Li Tsang was satisfied as he only searched for a pile of fragments in the opened and broken cabinets. I have never held so much gold in my arms in this lifetime. It's really heavy. Unfortunately, there aren't many decent luxury stores around here. Brother Big Corpse came and went dozens of times, tirelessly like a war god modified from a perpetual motion machine. The only thing that Li Tsang couldn't figure out was that he hadn't seen anyone. Even without a body. If it's not too far away and I really want to go home and have a look, I went to the second courtyard before I had a chance to see it after the house was renovated, right? Staring in the direction of Yanchuan Second Hospital, Li Tsang's pupils instantly dilated. Yanchuan Second Hospital, it hasn't collapsed. There's not even a crack, just stand there. Li Tsang's back was coated with a layer of white sweat. The second hospital hasn't collapsed. Where did my ward and floating island come from? Li Tsang climbed up a self-built small building and stood on the top of a 3-story building to look over. The corner ward where he used to live had complete and neat windows, walls, and even the apple tree growing well in front of the window. Hiss this. Taking a deep breath, I almost drank myself full. An inexplicable fear surged in my heart, and my scalp rustled as if it were electrified. Run. Hurry up and run. If you don't run, you'll end up with a big deal that even a barbecue can't solve. Li Tsang's veins remained motionless. I always feel like there's something even cuter than my first love waiting for me over there. I really want to go and take a look in any horror film. If the script dares to write like this, at least one company will die. But this is a legitimate book, so there is no need to worry about the author's special interests rising to the level of a character's household registration book. Moreover, after all, Li Tsang could not resist the extremely strange palpitations in his heart. Yes, it's the kind of ironhead who knows your girl is green tea and still generously goes to death to have a grand first love. 1 person, 1 corpse, 2 iron bars. Maybe it's 4 anyway. I don't have any eggs at the moment. After all, fencing is also a personal skill, and now the nutrition can't keep up. In short, he carried the steel bars and bravely stepped forward, riding a donkey upside down and killing towards Yanchuan's second courtyard. Li Tsang dare not walk on the main road. He saw a small group of monsters, taller and more powerful than the Big Corpse brother, hovering in front of a local seafood express store, so he walked around a small alley and headed towards the back door of the second courtyard. The process went very smoothly. As soon as they walked a corner, Li Tsang and Big Brother were blocked in a T-shaped alley by 2 monsters, one in front and one behind. The width of the alley is no more than a small car, with residential buildings and courtyard walls over 2.5 meters high on both sides. What kind of immoral and smoking person is putting glass debris on the wall? Li Tsang bared his teeth with blood in his hand. The 2 monsters were in completely different states from the Big Corpse brother, with extremely twisted bodies. Both arms and legs had their own thoughts, and they looked uneven. Their tattered clothes hung on their bodies, revealing patches of blue and purple ulcerated skin. If Li Tsang calls the original state of the Big Corpse brother, who was covered in scales and armor, monsters, then these 2 are at most walking corpses who can only moan in movies. Running is impossible. He disdains the enemy strategically and gives himself encouragement. It's just a battle of 5 scumbags, it's done in minutes. The 2 walking corpses vaguely retain the basic human form, which undoubtedly makes Li Tsang, who used to be of the same kind, very uncomfortable in his heart. In other words, is it only himself or everyone would be like this? Licked his lips, brother, can we just treat it as if nothing happened? Let's both be okay, okay? The answer is obviously not good. The two zombies showed extreme thirst and aggression towards Li Tsang's hand, which was bleeding incessantly. They stumbled on their long and short legs and launched an attack with unrecognizable steps. Not only that, they both charged and let out mournful screams. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. I only know there will be wolves in the snow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. I only know there will be wolves in the snow, WDNMD. Now Li Tsang is completely anxious. You can fight with me if you want, but don't shout when you step on the horse. There are at least 600 monsters on the floating island, so you can mourn here. Just a few people heard the commotion surrounding, really treating me like a master in charge of 10,000 people. Don't hide it, I saw the swona you were carrying in your pocket. An inch-thick steel bar shines directly on the teeth of the zombie, creating a big pussy. This thing seems to have no idea what avoidance is. Li Tsang's strength is at most considered above average among ordinary people of the same size, not outstanding. But even so, with the support of over 1 meter of steel reinforcement, it still produced astonishing output. The walking corpse shattered its teeth in an instant, holding back all its intimate words. Its body was still sprinting, but its head was already reversing. The result is that as the legs step higher and higher, they take off directly and land flat on the ground with a bang, with the back of their head hitting the ground first. As a warning from the previous experience, Li Tsang had no intention of stopping his movements. His hand, numb from the shock, tightly grasped the steel bars, bang 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 bang. Eyebrow, neck, heart, 3 bloody holes, almost transparent. Can you just say that this level of repair cannot be worth a few recommended tickets? Cough anyway, it's just a set of combos, like clouds, flowing water, antelopes hanging horns, and unlucky zombies dying on the spot. But a big question mark popped up in Li Tsang's head, so is Buddy's combat power actually so impressive? Looking back at Brother Big Corpse. Click, 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 Brother Big Corpse is holding a head in his hand, gnawing on the fragrance. There is a whole bloody spine connected to his head, which is still fresh, clearly just pulled out from the walking corpse. Does holding grass taste good? Bah, stop talking. It's not allowed after the founding of the People's Republic of China. No, it's not right. Haha. I'm afraid this guy is not a dead thug from a useless background. Those of us who come out with noble women know that in principle, we can't eat people. However, it seems that the fighting power of these two brothers is really not quite right, not to mention compared to the predecessor of that terrifying Big Corpse brother, even the current Big Corpse brother can instantly kill it, not in the same tier at all. Is it still hierarchical for humans to transform into monsters? At first glance, the two hungry goods are not the successors of socialism. The zombie fell out in 3 bites, and Big Brother did not show any subjective initiative anymore. Even his gaze returned to the previous stagnant water state. Li Tsang circled around Big Corpse brother twice. I always feel like something's different. There was no time to continue thinking, and the commotion just made was quite significant. Li Tsang and his Big Corpse brother quickly fled the scene of the crime. 10 minutes later, 1 person and 1 corpse climbed over the wall from the back door of the second courtyard. Bang! Li Tsang landed steadily, half of his body trapped in a strange white powder. What kind of thing is this? The white powder, resembling lime, covered the entire hospital. The thin part was only 20.30 centimeters, while the thick part was over 3 meters high. It piled up into small sand dunes with ups and downs in the courtyard, blocking even the entrance to the underground parking lot. Li Tsang picked up a handful of powder and carefully examined it before his eyes. The seemingly small particles are actually not very uniform, and when lifted out alone, they may not appear as pure and white as the whole. The particles vary in size, as fine dust and as large as gravel, and the surface is covered with extremely small sparse pores. Li Tsang felt something was wrong as he looked, and a cold sweat slowly trickled down. Why does this thing look so much like ashes? How many people will burn the ashes that have piled up the underground parking lot and the entire hospital yard? Isn't it necessarily enough to leave all the people on the floating island here? Bomb! Suddenly, the violent explosion interrupted his wild thoughts. Subsequently, scorching waves swept across the entire floating island. Li Tsang stood high and looked towards the direction of the explosion. The northwest direction seemed like a sea of fire. The flames engulfed several surrounding buildings, covering streets of 100 or 200 meters, and the mushroom cloud formed by the condensation of black smoke rapidly expanded. Are you crazy? That group of people blew up the gas station. This floating island has a diameter of only a few kilometers, and the noise caused by the explosion can be heard by anyone with ears on the entire floating island. Li Tsang vaguely saw several figures with humanoid gait flashing past in the distance, converging towards the center of the explosion. Originally, these monsters were all within a relatively fixed range and honest, but now everything is in chaos. Who knows where they will go when they scatter again? Li Tsang felt sorry for himself. I'm so stupid, really. I only know that there will be wolves in the snow. I only know that curiosity can kill cats. Am I sharing a side story now? Then, unable to control his feet at all, he waded through the white dust and came to the apple tree. Li Tsang swore that every branch of this apple tree and every inch of its bark wrinkle was the same as the one on his own island. Just that tree had half its crown broken, while the one in front of me was intact. Not only are they intact, but there are even fist-sized, green and tender apples growing on the trees. How could this be possible? It's just June now, and in the border of Yanchuan, apples cannot grow so fast even if they eat urea and drink nutrient solution. Roast and roast, there is an apple in my hand. Click, green and slightly sour, with a sweet aftertaste, especially crispy. It's hard to buy such a delicious apple for less than 5 yuan. Pooh, what am I really thinking? Let's have another one. Li Tsang, who had never eaten anything again on the island, was so angry that he dried 3 apples and his teeth were about to collapse. Breath, exhale, inhale, eat and drink, it's time to get down to business. Li Tsang's heart was pounding wildly, and his gaze fell on the familiar white curtain that opened a slit in the hospital room window. The ward is still there. The apple tree is still there. I shouldn't be in the ward too, right? Squeak! The slightly twisted plastic windows made a grinding sound, and the gaps gradually widened. Li Tsang held his breath, his hands trembled slightly, and he could even hear the pounding of his heart. Suddenly, a gust of fresh wind blew in, gently opening a corner of the curtains inside. A huge, crimson, eerie blue-veined eye, perfectly aligned with Li Tsang's gaze. My Nima, jump 3 feet. Ascend to the sky in place. Flatten your butt backwards and let the geese fall from the sand. Li Tsang's shock was quite remarkable. However, it must be said that human potential is truly infinite. Conditional reflex. It's amazing that a dry land scallion can throw itself backwards a few meters away. With this leg strength, even Big Corpse Brother can pedal 3 rounds for him, which is a waste. The window, which had just been pushed open, twisted and closed again under the influence of the wind. Li Tsang swallowed his saliva, his soul still in shock. Judging from the size of this half-eyeball, this thing may not be a giant. There was no movement in the ward, and in fact, the entire hospital was as quiet as a cemetery. Is it just a dead object? Just then, a sound suddenly came from outside the hospital. Run. Get into the hospital. Damn it, there's more to success than failure. When I stepped on the horse, I said I shouldn't bring these old bastards with me. Ah, help me, why don't they chase after each other? Close the door, quickly push the door up. A group of people rushed in from the main entrance of the hospital with a bloody smell all over their bodies. The hard asphalt road suddenly turned into a soft ground filled with unknown powder that was several tens of centimeters high. The group's feet softened and one after another fell, crashing into a rolling gourd. End of this chapter.